Hello. Thank you for joining us for another edition of Shining Light on Shadows, a candid conversation about mental health. This is episode 11. Our guest is Samantha Collier, surviving and thriving after rape and sexual abuse. My name is Neil Parekh. That's my co host, Don Helmrich Neuburg. I'm still getting kind of used to that, Don. How about you? Right? It's been
Yes, definitely.
2 months, 6 weeks, 8 weeks.
Almost.
We're almost 2 months, right?
Almost 2 months.
Uh,
Almost.
as folks might know, Dawn recently got married, and we were so thrilled for her. We are live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and my website. We're actually live on both mine and Dawn's Facebook pages and mine and Dawn's Instagram accounts. So please like, comment, share, tag a friend. Let folks know that we're going to be having a very interesting discussion today. We're focusing on thriving and surviving after rape and sexual abuse. Both Dawn, or all three of us, Dawn, myself, and our guest, Samantha Collier, are all survivors of rape or sexual abuse. And we'll talk about how it's impacted our advocacy work, how it's motivated our advocacy work, and more importantly, how it's impacted our mental health journey. Um, Don?
Yeah, Neil, I just wanted to pop in and just give a quick trigger warning,
Yes. Thank you.
because the topic that we're going to be talking about today can be very triggering for some people. It's a sensitive topic. Anytime you talk about rape or sexual abuse, it can bring up things for you. So we'll have some resources at the end for you. And if you need to step away, turn off your camera, do whatever is best for you, take care of yourself. We are happy to support you in whatever way we can.
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that, Don. Um, it is something. It's good. It's important to remember, particularly when people are, when advocates are talking about this, and they get comfortable with the topic, whether it's sexual abuse or whether it's mental health. I'll be honest that we actually had someone in the house today, looking at our furnace. We had a leak or something, and I said, "Well, I'm not going to be able to help you. My wife will actually have to help you after a certain time. I'm producing a show." And he asked, "Oh, what's the show about?" "Oh, it's about mental health." I've gotten to the point where I can talk about mental health with the guy coming to fix the furnace, which I think is actually, to me, a big deal because it normalizes the conversation. It's not something to be afraid of and to worry about. But the trigger warning is a good reminder that not everyone is in the same place. So thank you for that. Um, I was going to share that, and we'll talk more about this in a moment with Samantha, but I'm here because of a year-long conversation that I hosted with our good friend Candice Sanchez, the host of Unspoken Conversations with Candice. She dedicated season 3 of her podcast to male survivors of sexual abuse. And when she asked me to be her first guest, I said yes, and I'd like to co-produce it with you, co-host and produce it. And we spent the whole year talking about our experience as survivors, but we also talked about mental health, and that's what led me to think about this show and to reach out to you, Dawn, to be my co-host this year and potentially beyond. We have a number of people who are interested in being on the show, so we are looking at doing more shows in 2025, which is just crazy to think about. Um, where are we? We're sitting here. It's the middle of the summer. It's July. We've gone past Sexual Assault Awareness Month in April. Just for folks who are maybe not as familiar, all of the attention that is put on sexual assault and awareness with the Denim Day and Paint the Town Teal, which we'll hear more about soon. What about the rest of the year? What's happening in kind of advocacy circles outside of April?
Well, I mean, I think that Sam is gonna really talk about that because the name of her organization is Team Teal 365, which means that this is a 365-day a year problem, that rape and abuse does not pause because it isn't April. And so there is tons and tons of things that happen throughout the entire year. Neil, you and I are wearing teal.
Yes, we are.
Teal is the representative color for sexual abuse awareness. And there's things that happen legislatively all year round. There are things that are happening on Capitol Hill as we speak. There's a bunch of United Ways that are at Capitol Hill for Hill Day.
They are.
And yeah, and there's just I think it's a constant wish to educate and inform people, and we do it all year round.
That's great. That's great. So let's go ahead and bring in Samantha to start this conversation. We have a great blog post that she wrote. I'll pull it up on the screen. Thriving and Surviving by Soaring Beyond the Ashes. The pull quote from there: "My biggest flex and healing skill has been to rise beyond the ashes and soar while helping others." Let's go ahead and bring on our guest, Samantha Collier, and so she could talk a little bit more about her advocacy work. Samantha, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Neil. And Dawn, thank you. It's an honor.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And I
Sam,
see
why
you're
don't
wearing
you-
your Paint the City teal shirt.
Yeah.
I am. We just had our, believe it or not, our 11th annual Paint the City Teal Day this year. Who would have thunk it, right? So grateful. We started Paint the City Teal Day over 11 years ago during the month of SAM, which is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So I'm super grateful that we've kept the torch going. We started with poster boards inside of MATC, and now we're tealing the whole downtown Milwaukee, from Homebridge to underpasses on the highway to North Carolina is getting teal. Madison is teal. We also teal Fond du Lac. So yeah, super stoked about it. So grateful.
Well, you're talking about tealing the city. This is just one example. Tealing the bridge in Milwaukee, right? I mean, that's something to me as when you're in advocacy, if you're getting to the point where you can get get the institutions in the city to represent and be advocates for your cause, you're doing something right. I mean, this is huge.
Yeah, Neil, we're super grateful. This is the 4th year we've tealed the bridge, right, Don? It's been since 2020. So I'm working with the guys over at the home, and they really support the mission and the work around Sexual Assault Awareness Month. They support Denim Day as well. Last year, it was actually on Denim Day when we tealed the bridge. Just always bringing representation to the survivors. There's nothing like seeing the color teal from sea to sea, in the city of Milwaukee. So we're grateful to be a part of the solution and bringing, us out of those shadows and really saying that the power of teal is real. And there's a lot of us thrivers and survivors that see that color, that bridge, and meet us at the bridge. We always have events, and then that's the domes, right? The Milwaukee domes. So we actually have like 7 to 8 different institutions that support Paint the City Teal Day. Again, a lot of that work, and it stays up throughout the same whole month, right, Dawn? Because Paint the City Teal Day is a proclaimed day on April 2nd, but it stays up all the way until Denim Day, which is usually the last Wednesday of the month of April. So yeah, super, super grateful for all that work. And through us working with downtown Milwaukee and the Home Bridge, there's other awarenesses, like the month of January, the bridge is in blue for sex trafficking. So, we have other organizations that reach out to the landmarks, and they support the anti-violence work that we do. And I think Sojo got it purple for domestic violence month last year in October.
It did.
Let's say hi to a couple of folks watching, and I'm going to put Ticey up first. Ticey Gotzi, Team Teal 365, which is the organization you're the executive director for. I'm assuming you know Ticey?
I do. Yes, she is. She is an amazing thriver herself. She's an advocate for us with Team Teal, and she's also my sister. Like my sister, I love my sisterhood that we have. So she works hard with me. We co-facilitate doing direct services in high schools for the last 3 years. So shout out to Tycee Gassi. She's an amazing thriver and an amazing mom. She reminds me a lot of Dawn and Britt. Britt, and how you work together with your daughter, right? Tycee and her daughter Taylor, they're like the amazing healthy relationship example of work, right? So shout out to Tycee.
That's great. And we have another local resident, former guest on the show, and someone I can count as a friend, Kate Easton, Dawn's landlady, I guess, downstairs. But
I think she would prefer I say that she is my best friend.
Your best friend as well. Well, and I think she's also good friends with Sam, if this picture means anything.
Yes, that means so much. I love me some Kate, and all of us love
Yep.
us some Kate. But that's Kate. That's us on Denim Day at Denim Day Milwaukee. She's repping the Team Teal shirt. And Kate has been so kind for the last 4 years, I believe, donating to Team Teal 365 as the representatives for the month of Sam, where all the cookies sold. The beneficiary is us over at Team Teal. So I am so grateful for Kate. She's an amazing, amazing human, an amazing, amazing friend, and she's super sweet, and she makes the best cookies.
I'm a Kate fan as well. I got to meet her when I was in Milwaukee now a year and a half ago for Hope Shining Blue, and she was my host for part of that trip. So it was really great to get to know her. And again, she was a guest on our show several weeks ago. We had a great conversation with her and Dawn about some of the challenges that their sons were dealing with around PTSD, ADHD, and more. So it's just been really great to have her. Paula Kiger is joining us from Tallahassee. Paula is a colleague of mine at Digimentors, as is Apollo, who is saying hi from a gray Philadelphia. Glad to support your strength and representation on these important issues. While we're talking about Apollo and Paula, I want to give a quick shout out to Digimentors for supporting this show on a pro bono basis. I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Communications at Digimentors. We do digital marketing, events like this, strategic communications, trainings and workshops. We're doing a lot of work on AI now. But when I first came to our co-founder and CEO, Sri Srinivasan, with this idea, he didn't hesitate for a minute. And it's not a small thing in terms of the time that I use to produce the show and the resources we use. So I'm always grateful for the support from my colleagues and the people I work with. We have a couple other folks. Who's this? Jim Neuburg. Hello from the other side of the wall.
That would be my honey.
And Afrika. I think that was an Afrika sighting.
Come here.
You saw
it. He was crawling on the floor for a second. I'm like,
trying to avoid the camera. Hi there.
Hi.
Hi, Afrika.
How you doing?
Hi.
Your mom teal? Did you wear that color a lot?
Yes, yep, he's almost here when he gets off work. Yep, he does. And I usually have it buttoned all the way up to the top, but then my mom will unbutton it.
Oh yeah, sure.
Red is his color, and of course, teal is
teal. Of course. Jonathan is watching from New York. Nicholas Marin is watching on YouTube. Gives a teal hello. He's here in Alexandria, Virginia. And I guess so. It's not Afrika. Tycee knows him as AJ.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Then we're gonna have to adjust that.
So it's Afrika Jeffrey. His father's name is Jeffrey, so I felt I needed to put him in the mix. So it's AJ.
Sure.
Nice job, thanks.
He is. Great.
Yep, Jeffrey. He is. You are Afrika. I love you so much. Yeah.
So
I
cute.
love being a mom.
So cute. And we're a pro kid show, so that's
Yeah.
totally fine, and we love it. Um, I want to ask you, Samantha, in terms of, we talked about your work with Paint the City Teal, which again I think is an incredible expression of advocacy and obviously the culmination of a lot of hard work.
Mhm.
But can you explore a little bit about the interplay between your experience as a survivor
Mhm.
doing advocacy work and what that does for your mental health? How do those three things? What's the nexus for those three?
Right. Great question, Neil. One of the biggest things for me is making sure I take care of myself, right? So surviving was just like part of it, right? Like even getting to a thriving stage in my life, just surviving was reaching out and looking for a counselor. That's ultimately how I began a lot of like my journey. I reached out and I wanted to see a counselor, not because anything had happened to me, post, being raped at age 27 and then being molested at the age 6 through 9. But when I got to the age 28, I just really wanted a counselor. I wanted to figure out like different things about myself without having to be forced. And what I got faced with was, different therapists, different agencies would ask me like, are you court ordered? Why do you need a counselor? Why are you calling us? And that's how I found WCASA, which is the Wisconsin Coalition Against Sexual Assault, which is our statewide coalition in Wisconsin. And once I linked up with them, they connected me with the Healing Center, which is one of the only sexual assault treatment centers in the city of Milwaukee. And that's when I began to get a counselor and go to groups and really tell my story and, stand in my truth a lot more. So my survivalship started by wanting to mentally get healthy. And that came through telling my story and getting connected with other survivors. Dawn and I knowing each other for the first time, meeting at a Denim Day event, and now in this moment of thriving mentally, even now, I have a counselor. I've had her for 4 years. She's been amazing. Dr. Madison has helped me through many, many days of not pouring out nothingness to the community. First thing, I have to take care of myself. And what I learned is that having a counselor and having a healthy mind helps any situation that I'm doing. My advocacy work, being a mom, being a sister, being a daughter, making sure that I take care of me and always give myself grace. A lot of times, being a thriver, being an advocate, being an anti-violence work, a lot of times we don't pat ourselves on the back. We don't give ourselves enough grace. We might didn't help a million people, but we reached two. Happy for the two that we, you know what I'm saying? And I think that's a lot of it. So yeah, like thriving is also understanding to help others see themselves as survivors, right? That's part of it. And not just with my story, but with their own story, just reaching down to help them get up. That's a lot of the work as well. It's not always, taking people to different resources. Sometimes it's just helping them up and saying, what would you like to happen? What process would you like to go through? So yeah, that's a lot of it.
I think that's an important point. Just being that, having that sense of grace for yourself, you know, not worrying about how many people you're helping, but that you are helping someone, and that people will find the content when they need it. That it'll reach them at the right time. Don, I want to bring you in to the conversation. You actually wrote a blog post as well, and we'll pull that on screen. Um, the personal and community benefits of advocacy work. With the quote, "I knew that my voice could be a tool to make change in the systems that failed me. So that is what I did. I spoke up and I spoke out." Can you talk a little bit about that? What do you
Sure.
mean you say about the systems that failed you?
Yeah. So I think a lot of survivors that have faced the criminal justice system, maybe police, first responders, even the hospital system. We all have different experiences. My journey started 30 years ago, and at that time, there really wasn't a lot of education in the systems that I faced that taught people how to be sensitive towards survivors and what they had gone through. And there was a lot of victim blaming that happened in my particular case, and in the case of a lot of people who have been sexually assaulted. And I really felt that it was important to change those systems so that those survivors that came after me didn't have those kind of experiences, or those experiences were lessened. And I really appreciate what Sam said about taking care of yourself, because I spent years and years and years of my life not in my job, but after my job and late at night, being an advocate and pushing and striving and trying. And I burnt myself out. And let me tell you, there was nothing more freeing than being able to just sort of hand over this advocacy work to other people that were using this space for the purpose that I was in my purpose for. I needed a break. I couldn't do it anymore. It was just too much, and I had to step away. And I'll never forget Sam saying to me, "Go take care of yourself. It's okay. We got this. We got this. We're working on it. We're going to do it." And she just continued to carry on that torch. And in my blog, I talk about the first time that I met Sam. She told me that I was a big fish in a big pond. And what that means is that I was making this ripple effect in my community. And Sam,
We're having some internet issues, I think, with
fish
Dawn.
in an even bigger pond now. And hello?
Yeah.
Did I go off?
We have you back. You're going in and out just a little bit.
Oh no. Anyways, she's an even bigger fish in an even bigger pond, and I'm just so grateful to call her my friend, and that we get to work together so closely on so many different things.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dawn. I'll share the blog post that I put up, that I shared. Thriving as an advocate with the support of other survivors. Survivors can be thrivers. It's not always easy, and it's not always a straight line, but with the support of other survivors, it gets easier every day. And I definitely want to give my own shout outs. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Dawn and Samantha, in fact. And I mentioned Candice earlier as well. I first met Dawn at a United Way conference in 2016. I still remember when she referenced being a survivor in her presentation. It didn't have anything to do with advocacy or mental health or sexual assault. She was talking about data and evaluation, but somehow it came up, and I filed it away. As folks might know, and this is the Dawn mentioned at the earlier part of the show, gave everyone a trigger warning. It's important to repeat that for folks who may have joined in the middle. We are talking about references to rape and sexual abuse, some of our own experiences. I was abused by a neighbor when I was 7 years old, and I had not shared that publicly when I first met Dawn. And when she mentioned it, I just kind of filed it away that, okay, she's a survivor. She's someone I can talk to later. And, she has been with me every step of the way. I first shared my story on a show called the New York Times Read Along. Paula was there. She was helping produce the show at the time. She's watching now. Several other folks I know. Rochelle was watching. Rochelle Philippek is watching from Hastings on Hudson, a neighbor of ours. I remember talking to her after the show. My mom, who I know is watching on Facebook, but Mom, you got to press play on the video so I can see your comments. So press play on the video. Um, but I shared my story for the first time, and I was only able to do it. Dawn was there on the program with me. I had already had her as a guest on the show to talk about Denim Day, to raise awareness about that, and I did that through United Way. And then several years later, in 2022, I actually spoke on a panel of male survivors of sexual abuse that Samantha had chaired through the Milwaukee Commission, and I shared my story, and at the end of that, asked people who are watching, particularly women in the audience, to share to help men make space for men, to help men tell their stories because it's hard enough as it is. Usually, when you talk about sexual assault, the focus is on women, and that, I remember thinking at the time, asking Don asked me if I'd be on the panel. I said, "Well, I'm not from Milwaukee. Why would I be? What I have to offer?" And I think she asked, "Have you ever been to Milwaukee?" And I may have been there once or close. I've been to Wisconsin Dells when I was a kid, so maybe that was enough. But Samantha, thank you for organizing that session and allowing me to participate. That's how I met Candace Sanchez and uh, began this journey of talking about my experience as a survivor. And ironically enough, I I wanted to do this show about mental health because I thought it was harder to talk about mental health than being a survivor of sexual abuse. Before we started the show, I'd never shared with anyone that I saw a therapist or that I suffer from anxiety and occasional depression. I always thought that if I uttered those words, I'd lose all credibility, that I'd lose, any standing I had. Um, and in fact, I've been able to speak those words. I've been able to co-host this show, and the support that I've gotten, the outpouring of support when I share this experience with people. I sent out an email, for my Sunday show, for the show that I executive produce for Sri Srinivasan. I put in my email to 200 people, professional colleagues, etc., that I had a rough week this last week. I've been struggling with depression, and I'm working through it, but it wasn't pretty. Um, I can actually put that in an email and have people respond and give me support, and to be able to do that and to be able to share that on the air like this, uh, it means so much. And I couldn't have done that without Dawn, Samantha, our friend Candace, who she's not watching tonight because she's flying helicopters in Hawaii and looking at rainbows. So I'm not going to be too upset about that. But this is how I thrive with the help of other survivors. Um, Thank you.
Yes, yes. No, Neil, you're welcome. Yeah, I was very intentional when I was the chair of the city commission for domestic violence and sexual assault. I was very, 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 and Dawn and I worked hard. We're like, we need male presence on this conversation. And even with you zooming in, it was powerful. You know what I'm saying? Like they needed to hear a male's testimony because it's always a lot of us women, but we need men to get in the anti-violence work and feel safe about telling their story. And what better way than having an all male panel? So thank you for being bold enough and taking on the call to come. So thank
It
you.
was powerful. It really was. I mentioned Rochelle Philippek earlier. She is a neighbor of ours in Hastings, and she will be a guest on the show in September. So we're looking forward to that. Um, Jason Siegel, a former classmate at Wesleyan University, who I recently reconnected with, is watching. Jason, thank you so much. Looking forward to getting together with you one of these weeks. He's actually going to come down to DC, where I live, just so we can talk about some of these issues. And I really appreciate that, Jason. Looking forward to having you watch future shows and maybe even being a guest at some point if things work out. Ticey also said, Team Teal 365, help me find my voice. I've never shut up about myself being a survivor and thriver since then. I'm forever grateful. Our stories matter. And I couldn't repeat that louder. Our stories matter. Um, Whether it's mental health, whether it's sexual abuse, um, the number of people who respond when you share and open up is incredible. Um, that's reason enough. I mean, I shared with someone, um, when I think it was last year when I shared my story about being abused. I wished that others could find that strength, that courage to tell their story, because if they get half of the support that I got, it would be worth it. I think that's the big thing people are afraid of, is how people will react when you start talking. Um, Samantha, I'm going to ask you that question. When did you first start sharing your story? What was that process like for you?
Well, yeah, well, shout out to Ticey too for that, because that takes courage too, just to say I'm out of the shadows as well, right? And that's why I started Team Teal. So when I went to MATC, I started writing for their paper. The MATC Times, like nationally, is a really big newspaper, right? So I started writing opt ads about Sexual Assault Awareness Month. But before I did that, I actually reached out to my family and kind of set everybody down. I'm the youngest of four children. So I have two brothers and one other sister. So I actually sat down my siblings and my mom, and I told them what I was about to start doing. I was going to start writing about Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and I was writing about my assault. And it wasn't that I had to tell them. I just felt like they needed to know which way my purpose in life was about to take off. Because
Sure.
again, you can't change your name. You are who you are, right? People read things, they put things attached to family, they do different things. It wasn't my point what other people was going to think, but I just wanted them to know what I was going to do. So I just began writing opt ads in the MATC Times. I started attending Denim Day events. I also started my own outreach right at MATC, with a poster board with stats about Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and I would stand on what some would call a hallway where a lot of people would travel. And throughout the month of April, I would just set up outreach tables. And then I start volunteering more with the Healing Center and Planned Parenthood. And then I thought to myself, one day I was at the Denim Day event and I started using the term Team Teal. And again, it was my first Denim Day event. I was new to this whole anti-violence work, this whole survival energy. So I had told Dawn, I'm like, I'm just gonna stop saying it. So I went home and I bought like 2 domains that had Team Teal in the name. And then teal, the reason why I thought of the name as well, guys, is because teal is the color for Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Teen is because I always thought it was many different parts that God put inside of me. I wasn't just one something, that I had a lot of different variations. And then 365 because it's every day. So I started Team Teal as a LLC. And for the last 4 years, we've been nonprofit. So just keeping the integrity always around survivors. Collaborations is really big. Making sure that other people see themselves in the conversation that we do is really important for us. And actually make an impact to create other thrivers is what I'm in the business of doing. You know, just like other people coming alive and just understanding how amazing they are, and how even though they've been through violence, they don't have to be violent. They don't have to see violence. And that was really important for me, especially when it comes to the assertiveness of being a thriver as well. And the passion that it takes. Right. Again, going back to my mental health. Right. It's really important that I keep Sam together, right? Always keeping the oxygen on me before I try to save someone else is really, really important.
Yeah, I thank you for all of that, Sam. And I wanted to ask you a question because I know for me, when I first started out in advocacy work, it was all about my story. It was all about like, how do I heal by telling my story, and how do I get people to understand my story and my journey? And there's was such a shift over time to where my story wasn't even important anymore, right? It was all the collective stories together that equal this one system that's so flawed when it comes to people who've been sexually abused. And it's a different kind of flawed system than for what I can see in any other type of trauma that happens, because it's a my word against your word kind of thing, right? Like there's no, it's very difficult to prove if someone says I didn't do that, that act was not consensual, unless there's like very large evidence. So I'm wondering, Sam, if you've kind of had that same experience, or if what you think of what I just said about that.
Yeah, that's big. And that too, even the fact of sometimes understanding that my story isn't as important, the fact that the door is open for more stories, right? Just like cultivating that space. That's what we do now, right? We cultivate this space of healing, this space of safety, this space of I believe you, we believe you, right? Because our stories, they look at us like we're dinosaurs. We got it. We're thriving. We're doing of the thing. So it's like we learn that telling more of our story isn't as great as telling the thriving part. Like how did you get here? Like how did you get to the place where you see that you got to take a step back and get more collective and get more involved, right? Because the I party doesn't help anybody, right? It helps us to get to a point, but once you get there, and I think that's where the thriving comes in, because the thriving mindset is about helping other people through who you are, right? Through your authentic self. It's not anything that anyone else can do the way that Dawn does it. But when you do it, it impacts other people. They see something in you. Like with Neil, they see something in him. They're connected, right? Which gives them this trust, which opens up this floodgate of stories, right? This storytelling of this happened at this stage, this happened. It's like a process, right, that you go through. And for me too, to be quite honest, when I became a mother, before it was only Team Teal. Before I had my son, he's 5. Before I had Afrika, all I ever had was Team Teal. That was like my baby, right? And I was very particular and very, maybe some would say micromanaging with Team Teal, because I felt like that was something I had to like keep to myself. But funny thing, it's really for it's really just seeds. Team Teal is a seed in the ground that's going to be here when I'm dead and gone. But becoming a mother, I really understood the meaning of sacrifice, right? I really understood, like, yes, I'm a thriver. Yes, I'm an advocate, but now I'm a mommy.
Yeah.
So, it
Yeah.
kind of switches it up a little bit, where it's like, yeah, it's not really about my story. It's about how we don't want our children to be talking about consent. Like, I really don't want Afrika fighting for consent. I want him to be able to walk into it and it be like a natural thing that they just know that it's a fact, like a call to action or a public service, that we get to do with our children.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'll just say one more thing, and then Neil, you can move on. But the other thing that I said in my blog that I think is really important is, if somebody gets into a car accident and they break their arm, nobody asks them why they got in the car. Nobody ever asks them that. And we as survivors are questioned in every single thing. Why did you walk down that road? What were you wearing? What were you drinking? Why were you in that neighborhood? And I've always really struggled with why, why we have to be questioned in that way. That's such a victim blaming mentality. And I promise you that survivors blame themselves. They don't need your help. They don't need your help. We blame ourselves plenty. So I just wanted to add that addition, because I think that that's how our system is so flawed, that we as survivors have, just get really blamed for things that we don't deserve to be blamed for. And that's my soapbox that I will continue to stand on
No,
the rest
no,
of my life.
yes, Dawn, that's so good, because why don't we teach people not to assault? That's my whole thing. Change the narrative. Stop questioning us. Stop questioning the survivors. Stop shaming them. Stop victim blaming them, and then making public service announcements and reels about it, and start educating these assaulters, and start teaching better tools as to why are you doing of these things, right? Like paying closer attention on those people that's being violent, and asking more questions as to why are you doing this? Why are you doing these things? Instead of blaming. I agree with changing of the narrative, because that's the only way that we can reduce the numbers and then get more people to come out of the shadows, because so many fear being blamed instead of pointing the finger. And don't even get into power and control. Don't even get into that when it comes to sexual violence and people reporting and harassment and things like that, out of fear of power, out of fear of being fired, out of fear of different things. So yeah, all that has to change. I definitely agree with you, Dawn, with that narrative changing, outside of asking and blaming, pointing the finger somewhere else. And it's never the victim or the survivor, but that's where it always goes. And then when that happens, that's when people get silent.
Yep.
Absolutely. I want to bring in a few comments. My mom is watching. She says, Dawn, victims are victimized again by people, and kind of what you were just talking about. And Samantha, she has some praise for you, that you're one of the pioneers talking about sexual abuse and mental health. So thank you for that. Want to give a hello to Dr. Tachi Egwu, watching, I believe from Florida, but let me know if I'm wrong. She's saying good evening, all. We have a few folks watching on Instagram as well. So I'm going to turn over this way. Steve Taylor says, in the addiction recovery community, a common and accurate phrase is, the opposite of addiction is connection. Of course, you can't get to connection without the communication that we mentioned earlier. So I want to thank Steve Taylor, another colleague of mine at Digimentors, for watching and for sharing that. One of the things that you mentioned, Africa earlier, and that's not Africa, right? That we can just see. Is that the top? There it is.
Yeah, he's back.
Hey, Africa.
Oh yeah.
You do it. You can say right there. Absolutely. I was going to talk. I was going to reference Africa, actually, because we did a show, our third show, I believe, with Candace, who of course you know very well.
Yes.
And I'll bring Candace up, because we have a picture of several advocates from Hope Shining Blue. There's Candace Sanchez, second from the left. Dawn is on the far left. Samantha is on the far right, and Cat Claus is in the center. So we've gotten almost everybody in this picture on the show so far, Dawn, and we might want to see how we can fill out the rest. But when Candace was on the show, we talked about our kind of collective concern about how these issues, these mental health issues, might impact our kids. I shared that my anxiety. Am I passing that on to my daughter Emily? In terms of the way what she sees in my behavior, what she sees in how I respond to different issues. We had, I mentioned the other show with Kate, where she talked about her son's challenges. Dawn shared about her son's ADHD. These are real issues, whether or not they're hereditary or they're picked up from nurture. It's a real concern as a parent. What environment are we creating at home? What are our kids picking up on? And you're right, things change. It's one thing when you're alone. When you have a kid, that puts a different framework on it completely.
Definitely. Yeah, and even like I said in my blog, like raising my son is in love is completely different than how I was raised. I was raised in violence and survival. That's a whole different wave of energy, motivation, mindset than my son. He wants to wear a Spider-Man suit to Walmart. Sweet, we're wearing a Spider-Man suit
Sure.
in July to
Sure.
Walmart or to Target, whichever
Target.
whichever he's into. You did. And then giving him, my time, I'm never not like I don't have time for that right now. Like, okay, give me a minute, and talking things out and how do you feel and talking about his emotions or like all the things maybe in my 20s I probably wouldn't have asked him. But having him at 39 and now almost 45 as of next week, I just have a different mindset and understanding of my sacrifice in different spaces or different ways, or just like figuring out my triggers and how I need to cope before I even pick him up. Right? Making sure that I take care of myself, because he's not going to understand that mommy just sat in court for 6 hours with a victim and now that case just got thrown. Like he's not going to understand this anti-violence work. He only understands hugs. How are you doing? And then the company that I keep, I got to understand that too. Our kids are heightened with different energies, different tones of voices, different arguments, different people. So I'm very, he's not the all around kid. Like he doesn't go everywhere. Say for instance, if you see me tabling at Juneteenth, at Heal the Hood, you're not going to see my son. My son isn't going to be in the community when I'm dealing with crying people. That's too much, because I have to keep my eyes on him. That's my son. That's my everything. So I can't do both. So balancing that as well, Neil and Dawn, you probably know that too. Having your children in this work or in this space is important in different times, but not when mommy is working, not when mommy has the hat on for advocate or dealing with the homeless or just dealing with people. I'm not really dealing with people and my child at the same time, because I can't be both. And I had to learn that, right? And I had to learn when people ask questions like, so where's your son? Why don't I ever see Afrika? And you know what I always tell them? I don't know if I ever told you this quote, Don, but I always say, I never saw Harriet Tubman's kids. Did anybody ever see Harriet Tubman's kids? No, she just did amazing work, right? You never saw Harriet Tubman. You make that intersection, and then it's like, oh, you're right. You don't always see kids when you're moving people through an underground railroad. And in some cases, that's the work that I do. So no, you're not going to see my kid all the time. But when you do, he's a joy.
Yeah. Yeah, I got asked all the time, how come Brittany's always with you, but Clayton isn't? Well, Clayton's a different kid. He has a different view and lens. He doesn't want to be in the spotlight. He manages, his support of me and the work that he does around being a man differently than my daughter does around her advocacy work. And I tell people all the time, and that's okay. That's a smart thing. That's not an unsmart thing. That's a smart thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This has been a great conversation, Samantha. I want to make sure we get some of the data in here. We always work through some statistics. I also want to remind folks that if you did join us late, you can always catch the replay on the same channel that you're watching, on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on my website. It takes a little bit longer to get it up on Instagram, but it'll be there as well. You can watch the show from the beginning and catch this very interesting discussion with Samantha Collier. Dawn, as far as some of the data, the relevant data is concerned, can you walk us through
Yeah,
some of these
so
stats?
I think I think it's really important to understand that, a lot of times people think, well, somebody else's mother, sister, brother, daughter, aunt, uncle, um, but I will tell you that everyone in some way is affected by sexual violence. Every 68 seconds, another American is sexually assaulted. One out of every 6 American women have been a victim of an attempted or completed rape in their lifetime. Some stats say half of all women, some stats say 1 in 3 men. Um, I promise you that if you are in a room with more than 3 people, one of those people has been affected in some way by sexual assault. And 63 children a year were victims of sexual assault, and 97%, and I want everybody to think about this, 97% of perpetrators never spend a day in jail. And then we wonder why people don't report, why people don't tell. It's a very, very difficult crime to prove, especially if the person who assaulted you is someone you know, whether that is a family member or a friend or a boyfriend or a husband or a wife or a girlfriend, or if if you don't identify as male or female. um, that's a really, really important statistic.
And just in case, for folks who may be listening and not reading the screen, it was 63,000 children a year. Just want to make sure people caught that number, 63,000. Um, we do want to share some other resources that we always share at the toward the end of our show. We are approaching the top of the hour. Um, 1 in 5 adults suffer or have suffered from mental illness at some point in time. That's a data point from NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness. You can reach their helpline at 1-800-950-6264, or you can also text helpline to 6264. Their website is nami.org. We also shared these stats from Mental Health America, another great resource. 18% of adults have a mental health condition. That's over 43 million Americans. Again, 43 million Americans. You can reach Mental Health America. You can call or text 988 or chat 988lifeline.org. And their website is mhanational.org. And Samantha, obviously we've been talking about sexual assault throughout the show. We always share this graphic from RAIN. RAIN is the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network. Their sexual hotline is 800-656-HOPE, 800-656-HOPE. Every 68 seconds, an American is sexually assaulted. Every 68 seconds, an American is sexually assaulted. And we always share that, and those resources are also on the website for the show, if anyone is interested. If you don't have the website, you can find the show is on my website, neilparekh.org/shining light on shadows. You can find links to all the blog posts and all of the shows that we've had. This is our 11th show. So you can go back and look in the archives. We started this back in February. And as I mentioned, we have enough interest to continue the show into 2025.
Wow.
We just need to book guests to come in. People have, and several people have said that they look forward to the idea of picking a date in 2025 because of their schedules and planning ahead, which is just wonderful. So we're going to keep this conversation going for a lot longer. More immediately, I want to make sure folks know that we have another show coming up next week. We don't usually go weekly. We had to cancel a show in June. There was some self-care that needed to take place. I mentioned earlier I could not do it. I was sick for much of June, but we canceled on a guest. Reverend Tyler Coles is going to be joining us. He's a minister. He was an intern minister at the Unitarian Church that I attend, and I'm so looking forward to having him join us. We're going to be talking about getting help takes a lot of work and some courage. the whole idea of getting therapy. Once you realize it's not easy to do that, and I want to share that he came back for did a guest sermon for us back in February, and I just casually mentioned that we had just started this show. He was so supportive and so encouraging, and right away shared that he's in therapy, that his whole family has been dealing with anxiety and depression, but he's one of the few people to actually go and seek help. And this was all during coffee hour that he was sharing this with me. So I am really looking forward to really introducing him to all of you. Dawn, I'm sorry you're going to miss next week's show. You have a work engagement. Again, this is on that we very intentionally scheduled a show every 2 weeks so that we would have a break in between, that we could pace it right. And we had to slot this one in between. So I will be going solo next week. Wish me luck. And I'm sure you'll be sending good vibes. Let's see. A few other folks have left comments. Kate said, I appreciate all of you and all of your work so much. You all help so many. Kate, you do too.
Yes.
You do too. And Apollo says, thank you for all your strength, your will to survive, to support other survivors. That's standing in your power. Standing in your power. That's really great. My mom says thank you. Thank you, Mom.
Thank you, Mom.
Appreciate it. Always a loyal viewer. Jonathan, who also I think has watched almost every show, says it was informative. And thank you. So really appreciate all that support. And Nick Marin comes in with a little tealings, nothing more than tealings, which I get the joke. You get the chuckle there.
Good
right?
one.
You gotta give it up.
I appreciate the brevity of it.
Right. Jim says, great job as always. And Ticey is offering a peace and diamond, is it?
Yeah, emoji.
Peace and diamond emoji right there. Thank you so much, Ticey. Appreciate it.
Yes,
and Jonathan says he tries to catch every show that he can. We really appreciate all the support that you've given us to Dawn and I. We've had such an outpouring of support in messages, emails, people reaching out. I think just talking about these issues is helping, just for people to see that you can talk about this, and if they can get inspiration from that. If folks find it easier to talk about it in their own world, they don't have to be a guest on the show, but if someone is more comfortable sharing it with their family member or a close friend, whether they were assaulted, whether they are suffering or struggling with mental health, that means the world to know that. So thank you to everyone who has given us the support and helped us continue with this show.
And I want to add,
I
want to add one more comment, and then I'll let Sam have the last word. But I just want to share that it's also okay to not tell your story if that's not what you want to do. I think a lot of times we press this don't be silent, share what. But there are people who choose to not share their story, and I think everybody's story is their own. And they should be allowed to voice what they choose to voice when they choose to voice it. So I needed to say that. Sam?
Yeah, so powerful.
Absolutely.
I agree with you, because sometimes your dad is on his way. He's almost here. Yes. I'm going to turn the trolls on in 1 second. Gentle parenting, right? Gentle parenting. I love it. But yeah, I totally agree. At their pace, sometimes just being there for a person. They don't have to say anything, just knowing when they feel like they do, or listening to other stories is reassuring to them that they're in a safe space. So yeah, that's always good to remind people listening to whatever works best for you. You don't have to tell your story, not ever. You can write it, or you don't have to write it. You can just live, and that's good too. And that's all
Absolutely.
right too, and thrive through and whatever it looks like for you without taking off the band-aid, right? I think that's important, and never comparing traumas.
No,
No,
can't
exactly.
do that.
That's a great way to end, I think.
I,
Yeah.
I want to make sure folks know that we have set up a Facebook group. So I've dropped the links in Facebook in both my page and Dawn's page. Uh, Feel free to join us so we can continue the conversation. Once we get enough people in there, we'll start posting regularly and talking in between shows. So you'll find the links in Facebook. It's Shining Light on Shadows, the Facebook group, and we look forward to talking with you there. Samantha, thank you so much for joining us
Thank you,
for
Neil
this
and
show.
Dawn.
It
Yeah.
was great.
Thank you guys
Uh,
so much.
Absolutely. A last comment. Someone you might know, Vicky Walsh. Sam, you're always a joy and inspiration, and we'll definitely be catching this on rewatch. Sending you so much love and gratitude. What a
Oh,
great way to end.
Vicky. Hey, Vicky. I know she still work with Don over at United Way. She's amazing. And she did so much for a few clients of mine too. Hey, Vicky, I'm so grateful. Thank you,
Oh,
Vicky.
that's
You're an
great.
inspiration too. Thank you.
And there's Afrika coming
Again.
on to say goodbye.
Just to
Bye, Afrika.
say.
Bye, Africa.
Bye. Have a great
Bye.
night. Thank
All
you
right.
guys.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.